1. And we are recording. And I apologize. I have another computer right here running. I don't know if you can hear that. But
Nope.
Mike, who's author of Brine of War, which, my God, man, a man after my own heart. Special Activities Division, Special Access Program, waived Special Access Programs, directed energy weapons, orbital weapons. It was an enthralling read. I had my iPhone read it to me from a PDF. Took about, I don't know, 2 hours. So anybody listening, if you're a reader, probably, I don't know, like 3 hours. It's a quick read. It's fantastic. It's entirely up to date and topical. But with that, Mike, would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm a retired military officer. Um, Spent 30 years both active and reserve. Ironically, I guess most of the cool things I did were as a reservist. Of course, that was during the period of time for the global war on terror after 9/11. Um, I have some military service under my belt. I've done a few things. Uh, and I have kind of a wide portfolio of skills that went beyond just military stuff to include systems engineering and program management, that sort of thing. And generally, I apply all that kind of background lately, as because I am fully retired. I'm a retired person, period, to writing books that take advantage, I guess, of some of that background.
And for anybody listening, I'll put the links to Brine of War in the description as well as your Twitter. So what leads to you writing Brine of War? Because it'd be like it's so up to date and so topical. It would be like if I started using like a weird like analogous euphemism on this podcast and was like, what if a white man, we'll say he's 32, he has blue eyes and he does a podcast? People will be like, you're talking about yourself. And I'd be like, no, this is hypothetical. This is somebody named Tommy Tarrigan, not Tommy
Right,
Carrigan.
right.
Stunningly handsome, brave and intelligent, just kiss my own ass. People be like, you're talking about you. It's so, I mean, up to the Moscova, right? I mean, it is written as a 2022 book. Is it? Are
Well,
you?
it also is the last book of a series.
Yeah, it's book 7,
So
correct?
it's book 6 technically.
Okay.
Amazon is not incorrect. They are including an anthology, which I do at Christmas time. Blah blah blah. So there's 6 books. Brine of War is the 6th of that series. Um, so you don't get quite as much of the character development stuff that authors like to see, book critics like to see, that kind of stuff. So if you jump on board with just that book, you miss some of that preliminary, who these people are, what are their skill sets, all that kind of stuff. But um as at the end of the series, the series itself is, you have kind of an introduction thing to tradecraft and that sort of stuff, and then you get into the meat of what is the series about. Well, the series is about, um, from my point of view, I guess I don't think I'm alone fully, but the United States of America has 4 enemies, kind of in order of probably worst, worst to the best. On the top of the list is China.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Russia, then you have Iran, and then you have Turkey. And my premise is that we are at war with these 4, at least economically, or perhaps we should be. And the whole idea of the warlock as a character that is a person, an organization really, but a person that is outside of U.S. law.
Mm-hmm.
It's extrajudicial. And this guy can do whatever the fuck he wants to do. And he
And
does, as you saw. So gloves are off in his purview because he deems it as necessary. We are at a point of desperation when you look at our stance across the globe and where we are. But again, it's not a shooting war. It's covert. and we are addressing economic deficiencies through covert action, as you saw in the book itself.
And I've had on Will Arkin before. I don't think I've had him on this year, but he's former, I believe, Army Intel author. And one of his books, I think it's History in One Act. It's a novel about 9/11, in which he makes some assumptions that the first two hijackers were homosexual, and that's why they chose the two towers. They wanted like a symbolic thing. Makes a lot of a lot of assumptions and from his own core belief, but he has something in it called Apex Watch, and it's an organization that's extrajudicial, completely off the books, and it's kind of similar to the Warlock. It's anything and everything. And in his contention, it's that not that the United States planned 9/11, but rather figured it out, looked at the chessboard, and let it happen. Again, fictional novel. Great book, though. It's the same idea that there's an extrajudicial, beyond classified organization. It doesn't exist. It's not that it exists in blacked out records. It was never put on records to be redacted in the first place. How accurate do you think? Because so both of you guys, right, with service histories, have written about something like that. How is that just great minds think alike, or is there? I mean, it's kind of a catch-22. If you knew, you couldn't and wouldn't tell me. So
It's kind of interesting if you look at the GWAT generation, and that's not just boomers, millennials, X, whatever you call them. This GWAT, the post 9/11 kind of mindset generation, those that did serve, quite a few have come back quite disillusioned that to a country that they think is kind of falling apart. So it doesn't surprise me that a lot of folks like myself and this other gentleman are grasping for sanity through various means. In my case, I'm considerably older than you. It still is handsome, but older.
Yeah, of course.
It's hard to compete, but
it is. I got to compete with my dad. He reminds me of that every day.
But if in my assessment, I'm projecting quite a few things through fiction. I really can't write nonfiction without a whole lot of oversight, if you will.
Magnifying glasses up your ass.
Yeah. So the fact that the fictional world is quite convenient, but I do hit on some very very real policy level themes. Most of I'm not an action writer. There are obviously excerpts in there that are flashbang and guys getting their eyes gouged out, all that good, really good stuff.
Dish good to the face.
Yeah, just all the beautiful things, visionary things. But I'm kind of more at a policy level in life, and these are the things that impact me, and I know that they're the policies that we pursue now are what's going to affect the generations to come. So that kind of stuff concerns me, and obliquely, I write through fiction. So I mean, the whole thing with Brine of War, it should be pretty clear that I'm not particularly enamored with lithium batteries / solar power / all that kind of stuff. It is something we are pursuing. My point really is that we're putting the cart before the horse. If this were really the case, the raw materials that you make these things, lithium, whatever you make, solar panels out of, all that kind of stuff, it would be far better for the United States if we were able to produce those things at scale to address this demand for electric vehicles, blah, 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 blah. That's not what we're doing. We're saying, go out and buy a Tesla. If you don't go out and buy a Tesla, you're a fucking ape.
Yeah,
they're
you're
no
a
good.
Nazi, you're a misogynist, you want to kill
Right.
grandma
Or
and the
something.
planet. Yeah,
You know, uh, again, and I said it in the book, I think, you know, I am not, I'm not saying that, you know, carbon fuels have emissions that are not harmful. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not
sure.
denying that. You know, I'm just saying that we have to have a better plan to proceed without, all we're doing is making China stronger.
Yeah,
And again, in the long term, that does not serve us, really doesn't serve the world either. So
yeah,
these things are all foils. You know, it's a foil to address some of these kind of bigger things, and a lot of the readers that do give feedback, I mean, they understand that and they make comments to that. You know, yes, it's a fiction book, but you've got this whole other element stuff going on. You know, I try it to be entertaining as well. And you asked earlier about you know, why to get into writing. You know, that's one reason. The other thing is, I think we're both from New England. I went to the University of Maine many years ago,
all right.
and I was taking a writing course uh, by Stephen King. You might have heard him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of his lake houses was actually a couple lake houses over from one of my aunts from northern New Hampshire. I think it
Right.
was in Maine. And I remember when we watched it when I was like 8 or 9
Mhm.
and was so fucking scared. And
The 1990s version.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, I think my dad was contemplating killing us that night because we were just running into like my mom's bedroom every night and waking her every hour. And then finally my dad told, I don't know what his end goal was, but he brought us out on like the porch and showed us at night and it's like that house is where Stephen King wrote it. And I guess it kind of worked because we it took our fear level from scared to stupefied. But yeah, no, it's that's my recognition of Stephen King in New England.
He is a fantastic writer as
Yeah,
far as words on a page.
sure.
His political views, I can't say I agree with,
Yeah,
um, but he's a great writer,
yeah.
um, and I'm quite appreciative. It and The Stand are the two books of his that I just really love, and I like Tolkien also.
Didn't he write the book on writing?
He probably did. I mean,
Yeah.
he's
It's
you know,
it's
he's
an
been
it's an actual
involved
book
for years.
called On the book I think
Yeah,
is actually called On Writing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So he likes to mentor other writers.
I read that a couple years ago. I wanted to do writing, and then I taught myself Photoshop and then started the podcast. But what I did take away from it was, and I don't know if he meant to or not, but he actually went into it saying that like, he had no guidance. There was no structured plan for it.
Hmm.
And I thought it was ironic. And again, I don't know if it was intentional, it was brilliant. If it was unintentional, I guess technically it's still brilliant in that the message persists. But he's giving a lesson while saying that the path he used to get to where he was or is didn't exist. It wasn't a course. He didn't sign up
Hmm.
for it, right? I got into medical school out of college. I went to an academic advisor my freshman year and they laid out the path. What he's saying is that there was no path. He just got there. And when I read that, I stopped reading the book because my logic was and still is, well, he didn't have a plan and he got to where he is. So if I deviate from that, then I won't get to where he is. So that's why even with this podcast, people are like, how come we don't do it this way? You should take a class on I'm like, the fuck I won't. Because you have to the
Do your
the
thing.
the
You got to do your
multimillionaire
thing.
said make it up as you go.
Yeah,
So
you got to do your own thing.
which is why I do
Find your
just
own path. Do your own thing.
yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. And I lived in Portland, Maine for like I only lived there for like 7 months, but I went to for my junior year of high school, I went to Cheverus
Hmm.
High School. Yeah.
Hmm.
I remember there. Yeah. I had no friends there, so all I did was lift weights and I've been kind of lucky from that since. It's been 15 years and I think I still have the muscle mass from it. But um to kind of get back to the if you can as on writing, as you can tell, the podcast is no rhyme or reason, no direction. But so And I've said this a million times on the podcast. Anybody listening is probably rolling their eyes at the fucking head, but I'm 32 right now. When I was 18, I voted for Obama because I wanted hope and change.
Mhm.
In 2012, I voted for Romney because I was pre-med and was like, the fuck you won't have, Medicare getting involved with, like, I want to be a doctor. In 2016, I voted in the primaries. I was super depressed. I had lost my brother to suicide 2 years prior, and I voted for Bernie because I was like, everyone needs mental health care. Didn't, which I still do believe. Uh, didn't vote for the president in 2016. My life was super fucked up, and that's when I moved home to my parents' house. 2020 voted for Trump because I liked him, didn't like the rioting, blah blah blah. So I lay that down to show that, like, I do practice what I preach. I keep my mind malleable, and I try not to fall into holes of cognitive dissonance where you're just in an echo chamber, because that's the end of free thought. You're done developing. It's a picture taken. It's done. The thing doesn't exist anymore. You're just gonna circle the drain until you're dead. That's my opinion. So I would like to think, and of course I like to think it because I am me and I'm my own ass kissing ego, but I'd like to think I can look at things from different angles. And your book brought it up too, that, like, the current plan of the United States doesn't make sense. And we see it all the time. You see the memes. Oh, Biden's dumb. He's wearing a diaper. He doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah, he's a puppet, of course. Everyone knows that. I don't think these people are dumb. I think they are competent, and they are actively dismantling the United States from within, because it's the only way to take out the hegemon. You can't take it toe to toe with missiles and tanks. You have to dismantle it from within. I think that's what's going on. And the reason I brought up the whole
It's
voting
also
thing,
been a very, very long path.
oh, it's been decades in the making.
Yeah.
The reason
So
I brought up the whole voting shit was because, so as not to white guy, blue eyes in front of an American flag saying I voted for Trump, I don't want to just sound like some, reactionary, I don't like everything Biden does. It's not the case. It just seems, and it's like you just said, it's decades in the making. It's not Biden, it's not Obama, it's not Bush. It's decades in the making. It seems like an act of dismantling. And really, I think giving all of our javelins and stingers and APCs and Carl Gustavs or whatever to Ukraine, giving our strategic oil reserve to China. I mean, it seems like an active demolition from within. Do you did you hint to that at all in the book when it's, no comms are safe, don't speak about this inside the building or in the bubble or in the skiff?
yeah, let me again, this is a whole series. So that
Yeah,
you're at book 6.
I need to read the
Let's
first 5.
let me just go to the very end of the first book, and it's the epilogue portion where there's a character, John Prescott, blah blah blah, and the book's pretty much about him. So it says, quote, John had served in uniform from Reagan to Obama, loyally riding the peaks and troughs of the sinusoidal wave of policy fluctuations with seemingly little common ground. Gone were the days when Democrats, Republicans would at least agree that the Soviet Union was bad, communism was bad, and that America stood the ramparts of all that is good and just. Yada, 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 yada. And then when you get to Brine of War and there are those little things, again, you go back to probably Stephen King and writing 101. Every story has to have villain.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is the end of the series. But in this particular thing, well, who is the villain? Who would you think the villain is in the book that you read?
First read over, I'd say China. Second read over, I'd say American leadership that got us to this point.
Okay. Um, Pretty much in any of the books, yeah, there's always the big bad, and the big bad is, China typically. But say in the 5th book, the emphasis is on Iran. So
Mm-hmm.
Iran is big. In Brine of War, yes, China is always the bad guy in the background, but there has to be kind of something you can put your finger on that's very tangible, and that is Mr. Lansing, the departmental interagency liaison director of operations, which spells dildo. Um, so and he is Mr. Lansing is he is the epitome lapdog. What's the term I want?
Just climbing the ladder.
Well, deep state.
Yeah.
He is deep state personified. So yeah, there's some undercurrent kind of commentary in there, and I use Mr. Lansing quite a bit sarcastically if you're reading throughout some of the way it's written. Yeah, that is one of our big problems. It's not just, quote, the government and who presides over it by position. It's this entire bureaucracy of acolytes of and right now it's this particular administration, and this administration is completely enthralled with the pursuit of AOC's green agenda type thing, AOC / Bernie for that matter. Which again, and I stated pretty explicitly, I have no problem with that if we had a comprehensive, beautiful plan that was phased over time and we were in sequence, properly. And we're not. And I just kind of say that, when I look at all the variables that are across the board that need to be addressed, and at the end of the book, that's what the warlock is doing. He's kind of looking at the problem set as an engineer, and he's like, well, these assumptions, these variables are out of order. Let's rack and stack this a little bit differently. So I do tend to have that kind of commentary, and I'm not really being. If you read across all the series, every administration, to include Trump, to include Bush, Obama gets quite a bit. Everyone gets a little hit, for the mistakes that they made that brought us to the point we're at. I'm hoping that answers the question.
Do you think something like the warlock exists? And if so, you mentioned continuity of government in the book. I love continuity of government. My favorite book is Raven Rock by Garrett Graff, all about from FDR through like Obama, Cheyenne Mountain, Mount Weather, Raven Rock, Site R, Greenbrier Hotel. I love it. I think it's awesome. Continuity of operations, enduring constitutional government. I just think it's also badass. Another thing I often bring up in this podcast is, you can go back to Eisenhower, go back to Kennedy, and find documents about it's every war plan imaginable. What would happen if Venezuela released a bioweapon off the coast of San Francisco while Russia bombed Boston? Whatever. I would imagine, especially from the quote, was it Brezhnev or Khrushchev or Gorbachev or whoever, communism will come to the shores of America, but the flag will be raised from within. Just loosely paraphrasing. I can't help but think somewhere in the paranoia of the Cold War, a Curtis LeMay type, a McCarthy, a whatever, a James G. Sangleton, that you look ahead for something like this, where it seems that the White House is occupied by an un-American power, that you'd have something, and I don't know, is it a one size fits all? Is it just a warlock where that just deals with all problems and it says, hey, get it done however the fuck you need to get it done, as opposed to having individual war plans for it, right? You mentioned in the book, I'm going to be MIA. Everybody needs to understand the mission so we can all complete it if you can't contact me. Yep. Kind of seems like the warlock is a one size fits all. Whatever threat comes to the shores from within or from without, deal with it and, and make sure the Constitution survives. Do you think something like that really does exist? Or is it just fictional brain?
Yeah, I would, officially I would say no.
Sure. But for wild speculation on my podcast.
Again, you go back into this idea of, quote, the deep state. And you made an observation. And again, I'm not being critical of Biden, his physical abilities, whatnot.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But I've seen, daily, people saying, oh, he's drooling all over himself. It doesn't really matter. No. There is a fairly consistent theme that's being pursued. Whether it's driven by him or not is nearly irrelevant. I say that I'm not saying I condone that. There is a constitution. The president has very specific executive powers. Congress has very specific legislate. I mean, there is a beautiful template called the Constitution that they could follow. That's nice. Uh, and in Afghanistan, for example, you always use the term shadow government of Afghanistan. So you had a U.S. facing um, government, and then there was one that was below that, and a second tier level that was really running things. And typically, the Taliban was running that shadow government. Um, I dislike the idea that that would be necessary. I think as a system goes, um, the Constitution is a fantastic framework that how we do business. And I certainly would like to abide by it. Um, Now, with that said, I also recognize, depending on who's in charge, which administration and what policies they favor, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to agree with the direction they're going. And I don't. We're at the point um, of almost no return as far as us being, number one, the United States being number one. And we need to do something very, very, very drastic to change. It's not just changing an administration. There's a large enough. I don't know if it's 40%. I don't know if it's 81 million people. I don't know if it's 20%. I don't know the number, but there's a large enough portion of the population that's kind of driving the train through those mechanisms of government that exist. Um, I recognize that as being not optimal, but bear in mind, my books are externally focused, external, enemies like China, whatever. I do not delve into the domestic stuff, although I am tempted. In the fourth and fifth book, I kind of broached that idea, just in conversation sort of thing. And I put it to bed in the fifth book. The Warlock's charter, his extrajudicial charter that doesn't exist. He does not get involved in domestic stuff. But I would just tell you that the direction that we're going, if you extrapolate it over some time, I don't know if it's sustainable. I don't know what the heck we're going to be 20, 30 years from now. So a Warlockian, I guess, type of activity applied to domestic concerns, sounding like might be needed. I say that as the fictional author.
Yeah. And like the deep state, it's like, we don't like the idea of a deep state, an unelected elite, an iron triangle of contractors and corporations and whatever the fuck. But if it arises, it arises, right? You don't like the idea of mold, but if the mold's there, well, then you have to deal with the fucking mold. So, from an evolutionary standpoint, whatever currently is, you don't have to like Apple. I'm using an iMac and an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
It just, hey, they suit me best. Tell me PCs are better. I'm just telling you, as someone that's done 890 episodes, an iMac kind of works better. I don't know. Maybe I'm a moron, probably, but it's just what is. So something like the deep state, whether in the United States or abroad, if it does exist, then it clearly has some sort of a fitness in the biological sense, capital F, the ability to raise progeny to reproductive age, or a shadow institution that is managing to take steps throughout over the decades, and it still exists. There's a reason why it still exists. I would imagine a Warlockian figure, it wouldn't be much like the deep state wasn't granted. It just came to be. Organized crime isn't granted. It finds the holes in the system and milks profit out of it. A Warlockian figure wouldn't ask for permission. It would, by the very nature, it would just come to power it's extrajudicial. It's not asking for a yay or a nay. It's looking at a cancer inside of a system and saying we're going to fuck it
Right.
up.
And the actions taken would be commensurate to the threat presented.
Yeah.
So you're going to get some pretty drastic effect.
Well, yeah, you're going to get false flags. You're going to get things that stand alone you couldn't stand by as an American.
I mean, you can look at Brine of War, look at without being too specific on the actions. There were two very drastic actions fomented, through the warlock doing some activities. The one in the Malacca Strait is as an example.
Mm-hmm.
With the idea that I'm going to induce a little bit of doubt between China and Russia, and I'm going to get those two at each other's throats. I mean, that's that. So there were really only two things, I guess a third, the cyber thing,
Mm-hmm.
that the warlock did, which is quite a small number when you look at the book compared to the other books. But the emphasis was, I'm going to do something that they think the other guy did.
Yeah.
And then China's going to retaliate. Then Russia's going to do this, and they're killing each other. I'm not doing anything. I'm just watching them fight. So it's kind of a manipulative war. And that's just that particular book example. If you tried to do something in domestic affairs in the United States, you probably could use the same kind of methodology. It would have to be pretty slick, But the point being, I think you're asking, do I think we're at the point where we need such drastic measures? I guess you could ask me that after this midterm election, and I say that because I certainly favor the constitutional means that is still available.
Yeah.
And it's the one we have to apply by law. Hopefully there's enough people that have if nothing else, and never mind the real I really do not understand why Second Amendment is this big controversy. I personally just don't understand it. But let's just say that's controversial. That's an issue that's of such great. We don't want to touch that. We don't want to touch abortion. When we get into the midterm election, let's just look at the things at hand that are just not quite right. Let's look at inflation, and that applies to everybody, every swing and Richard. I don't care what your political flavor is. It doesn't matter. You are affected by inflation through your pocketbook, and people should be aware that just one reason why we're at the state we are could possibly be the day that Joe Biden took office. He said, shut down Keystone Pipeline.
Yeah.
I mean, if not physically, stopping an actual flow of gas and oil, whatnot, he's setting a marker to the United States businesses that, hey, investment that you might want to make in this climate, this environment, is not going to go well. So what are businesses going to do? They're not going to invest capital into the next great thing. At Brine of War, I make a lot of points about the regulatory environment as it relates to mining lithium and other kind of ores that are required for these electric vehicles. What sane business guy is gonna put forth all his capital? The government's just, hey, we're gonna pull the plug on that, sorry, or we're gonna drag you through some kind of nonsense for 2-3 years. The opportunity, the business opportunity is now. It's right fucking now. And if you want to compete in the business world, you better be adroit. You better be on it, or you're going to get smoked and you're going to lose. So, again, the midterms, people should just be thinking, if nothing else, never mind any kind of fluff, just think in terms of what's going on that's affecting me? Why am I going to pay taxes for some guy that couldn't pay his college debt?
It's my own experiences. It's being 18, going to a private Catholic school paid for by mom and dad, living in a nice home in a nice country club paid for by mom and dad. And I'm free to go hope and change. It's, it's not my money.
Right.
4 years later, after 10,000 hours of studying organic chemistry and breaking my balls, and despite going to the University of Georgia, only ever attending one football game, really having no fun, studying the entire time. Yeah, I got to a point where I was like, hey, fuck you. No, 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 because this now affects me. So, but that then raises the question: is the electoral process? I mean, there's always been cheating from the dawn of time till now. It's just what it is. If you don't think that, I got a bridge to sell you. But if you saw what happened in 2020 when it stopped in the middle of the night, you have to question its integrity. And then you have to question if there are people, and it seems so obvious, right? Inflation. And you don't have to tell anybody who you voted for, not yet, at least. Right? We're still free to keep that quiet. You don't have to say who you voted for. You can go pull the lever for Trump and then say you voted for Biden. You're allowed to get all your, all your circle jerk back patting. But I mean, you're there. You're getting fucked by groceries every Friday. You go in there and chicken's 25 cents more every single week. You can't fill up your gas tank. You can't use anything. You're running out of money. Your bills are through the roof. Yeah, part of you is going to inherently, right? China shouldn't use slave labor, but I mean, what do I use? I use an iMac and an iPhone. Why? Because it doesn't really affect me. And the reality is it costs less money than something morally sourced. It's just what it is. It's not right. It's not right at all. It's probably objectively wrong, but I still do it because it's less money. So people are going to vote for something that eases the strain on their wallet, on their pocketbook.
I hope. I hope.
But it then brings into the question of, and is this just me being a cognitive dissonantly affected Trump supporter, or is this a legitimate critique? If people keep voting for this thing that's seemingly fucking them, are they really voting for that, or has it already been captured?
Well, I think, part of that, and it's been, at least a decade, probably two, maybe 3 decades of an education system that just builds people that apparently aren't thinking through things. We're a nation, $30 trillion in debt. And we go about, hey, let's do this bill. Here's more funding. Here's more this. Here's more free stuff. Well, at some point, there's two things that could happen. Either this entire house of cards just folds, because this debt is a real thing. It's not made up.
Yeah.
It is very, very real. And sooner or later, we're going to have to reverse the course of spending. Let's say it was $30 trillion given to Smith and Wesson to build revolvers. It's not hope and change, fluffy bunny rabbit, nice, beautiful. It's $30 trillion. It doesn't matter what it is. It's $30 trillion.
$30 trillion.
And pretty soon you're talking real money.
Yeah.
Eventually reality will set in. On the podcast I was on this morning, we talked about, what's going on in Europe and their situation because of the war in Ukraine. And, Russia has Europe by the balls. They got them by the short hairs, and why? What do you mean by that? Well, I mean, gas and oil, the diversity and inclusion, the diversity that the European Union chose as far as their energy portfolio is 90% serviced by Russia. That's again, the business guys are going to say that's not too smart. Putting all your eggs in one basket, not too swift. But I think the people, you see glimmers that people are kind of they're figuring this out. Like, wait a minute, my gas bill or whatever at my pub went from, $20 a month to now it's $600 a month. And
Yeah.
I don't remember the numbers. And, that poor guy that's running a pub in England, he can't continue to do business. He could say, well, I'm going to pass it on to the customer. Well,
Where's
the
the customer
customers,
getting the money?
they hurt the same thing when they go home. They're getting the same bills. So eventually, the reality will set in. All these bills to pay, this $30 trillion, whatever. And where does that come from? It comes from, we just like to spend money. We're going to have free college. We're going to have free medical stuff. We're going to have free everything. And there's a whole bunch of people wanting to pursue that because no one's put the brakes on them and said, hey, pay me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean,
Stop everything, pay me. Well, I don't have the money. Well, you're done.
no goodies.
That hasn't happened. Someone, the leg breakers from Las Vegas haven't come in and sorted you out yet.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have any money? Well, we're going to break your knees. Financially, fiscally. Eventually, maybe there will be, we'll have a little less spending because we will have people say, okay, enough is enough. Stop. Not only stop, but we're going to take this back. We're going to take this back. We're going to take this back, the spending. We're going to shut that off and put it back into the treasury and reduce that $30 trillion debt.
Or we're gonna wonder how come no one's coming, taking the baseball bat to our metaphorical legs yet. And it's, I mean, kind of how I look at it. This is obviously my uneducated, inexperienced wisdom, but I think it's because we've been carrying the biggest bat for 7.5 decades. The realization might be the reason why no one ever comes knocking to get the bill paid is because we have the biggest bouncers. That might be the brutal red pill, is like, hey, we can be progressive and Mike and I can have this conversation on a Wednesday afternoon, and I can go to the park and walk a dog and it's all beautiful and good. But the reality is I think it was who wrote Black Hawk Down?
Mark
Bowden.
Yeah.
He says in the opening, around the kind of along the same lines, is like, it's all civilized here, but around the world, power still flows from the barrel of a gun. In the United States has the biggest guns.
So, and I don't disagree with that at all.
I'm not saying it's right. It just seems to be what is.
That's tough shit if you don't believe that. That's
the way Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah,
that's how things work.
Carry a big stick,
and that's why Russia has Europe by the balls. It's the same thing. They've got the big stick in this, and extrapolation from that is, what is the likelihood of the capitulation to JCPOA Part 2? If Germany is one of the negotiators with Russia, someone please explain that to me, how Russia is negotiating this thing with Iran. And go back to what I said, the series that I have written, 6 books: China, Russia, Iran, Turkey. Those are bad people. Mark it, write it down. Read my lips, write that down. But as far as this big stick in the European Union with oil, Germany is very likely to say, well, since clearly Russia is aligned with Iran, and Iran has a whole shit ton of oil sitting in storage that's, quote, sanctioned, and we need that oil to get through the winter. Yeah, we're going to roll over in this JCPOA thing. That's your big stick right there in action. Now, was that the United States with the big stick? Nope. Things are changing, and that's the point of my whole series, is that that dynamic is changing. And we're paying attention to pronouns, and we're paying attention to the idea that gender studies and twerking is a wonderful thing for a 7-year-old person to observe, etc. Are we thinking clearly as global strategists and the, the leaders of the free world? I don't think so. We're so distracted with nonsense. What pronoun do you use? Who gives a flying fuck? Get out of my face.
Yeah.
None of your business. I don't really care. If you want to call me she, it, him, whatever, I don't care, man. Where's my paycheck?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Or
it's crazy. It's a crazy world.
Or it's nobody in Dresden was wondering what the pronoun was of the pilot dropping the incendiaries on their city.
Well, that was an entirely different generation. That was a whole different thing.
But
we were so far from that.
No. What I mean is it doesn't matter on the world stage. Did you watch 9/11? Did you watch the bomb? Did someone watch the bombing of Hiroshima and go, "Oh, well, they're genderqueer. It's cool." No, it was a bomb over a city. It speaks. It doesn't need to speak. No. It just is. I don't have to wonder what the gender is in my water bottle. If I let go, 9.81 meters per second squared. It's going down. Doesn't give a fuck.
That's the only thing I remember from physics right there.
Hell yeah.
9.81
meters per second squared. Yeah, but that's my point is, regardless of the generation, when Alexander the Great rolled up, people didn't say, I wonder if it's he or it's him. No, your head was chopped off, the bodies were lumped together, lit on fire, and thrown over the city wall as psychological warfare. Well, it doesn't care.
I'm in agreement with you. That is the mentality that China is applying, across the world.
Yeah.
You look at the book, and there's a nice little chart. I don't know if you blew it up or not. I do a lot of research in these books, and there was one particular document I paid like $16 for that I somehow lost digital rights to after I paid, whatever. But there's pictures from that book in there that I did get in time, whatever. And there's one image that shows ... little on the global map. And it's the one where I was talking, the context, we're talking about Latin America. And of course, the legend of this map was covering over Latin America. But the dots on the map are ports that China paid for.
Yeah, Belt and Road.
And you read through the text of the book, 63 ports across the entire globe. And what does that mean? Oh, who gives a crap? Well, let's say you're Uganda and you have an airport at Entebbe and you don't have the money to rebuild it, whatever. You go to China and say, hey man, can you, oh sure, we can build that for you, not a problem. We're going to build it for you and we're going to charge you X vig, for interest, yada yada. And and if you default, we'll just take that port for off your hands.
Yeah.
Yada yada. A couple of years after, what happened? The country of Uganda could not make the payments for that entire airport. And what did China do? They took the goddamn airport.
Yeah, that's
the airport of Entebbe. There's a book, thing called The Raid on Entebbe, back in the 70s, counter-terrorist thing where Israel had, back in the 70s, there were a lot of hijackings. And Palestinians, PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization guys, took a plane from whatever with Jewish citizens, Israeli citizens, and they landed in Entebbe. And the whole book, the whole thing was Israel said that ain't happening, and their best commandos. What was Jonathan was his first name. Who's the last prime minister of Israel? Netanyahu.
Bibi
Netanyahu. So Bibi, Netanyahu's eldest or elder brother, was Jonathan, who was the hero of that
Oh yeah,
Israeli raid. He died
yeah.
in that raid. He was an Israeli commando. So I mean, Entebbe itself might be recognizable to people when I say that. They're like, "Oh, I remember that thing back in the '70s." But now that is a Chinese port. So the point is, they're playing hardball.
Oh yeah,
They're playing hardball. We are not. Now the warlock, he's playing hardball,
yeah,
and he can give as good as take. In fact, he didn't take anything.
yeah. It
So you ask me rhetorically, do I think? It's kind of wishful thinking, I guess. There's a retired CIA paramilitary officer who I know. I won't say his name, but um, he agrees vehemently with me because
is
he
it
is of the same mentality. Um, it's not that we don't have the capabilities. It's not that we don't have the talent. It's not that we don't have the brain power to do certain things. We just don't have the will politically to do certain things. And that's why you have a warlock in the fictional series.
is the retired guy the guy I've interviewed?
I think so.
Well, I've had on a couple of CIA paramilitary guys, so I can't actually plausibly deny. But yeah, the China's Belt and Road Initiative is brilliant. I mean, I don't know if you've ever read Stealth War by Brigadier General Robert Spalding.
Yeah,
Uh,
I
I
know.
I interviewed him episode
Oh, no
one
kidding. Cool.
163. I don't know why the fuck he came on my I was still doing it above my parents' garage. I had like a shitty webcam and I was in a big room. It was echoing. To this day, I don't know why he came on the podcast. I had like 100 subscribers, and now he won't come back on. And the podcast is 100 times the size it was. It's completely more professional now. That was just a weird stroke of luck. But he came on. I love his book. But he says it in the opening, it's you have to like remove your emotion from it and just look at it objectively.
Mhm.
China's waging a beautiful war. You don't have to like
Absolutely.
it. You don't have to
Absolutely.
like it. Hey, you don't have to like the Japanese. God damn, were they effective? You don't have to like the Nazis. God damn, did they have some engineering prowess? It's just what it is. If you don't recognize that, you're not going to be able to defeat the enemy. But China is doing that, and that's because that used to be our scam. We'd go into the IMF and the World Bank. We'd be like, "Hey, Zimbabwe, do you need $1 trillion?" And they'd be like, "Yeah." And we'd be like, "Cool." And then like when they can't pay back the light poles and indoor plumbing we gave them, we're like, "Hey, don't worry about it. Just give us mining concessions, and we'll go in there and we'll take it, and you get to keep your shit." China's just doing it a little differently, and it's we're going to build an airport or we're going to have a warm water port, and when you can't pay it, that hey, we're just going to come in and we're just going to occupy it. And they are slowly wrapping around the world, not unlike we do, but I do think that they are the evil empire. I do think the United States, for all of its flaws, is the least worst place in the world. And I say that from some of my best friends, Prince, Ivan, guys that have migrated from Bulgaria, from Kosovo. They drag their balls over broken glass to get here. And that's just a couple years ago. So I do believe we are the best and not in some blind rah-rah America, but rather the least evil place to
Yeah,
ever.
what's the alternative?
Exactly.
I mean, it's very clear. It's very
Yes.
clear.
It's
So you mentioned BRI, Belt and Roads Initiative.
yeah.
That's what book 4 is all about. Boom, slang, gambit.
All right.
And you look at the cover and you go, oh, that's a Chinese flag in the background. Well, that's why. So what you read in Brine of War, that kind of methodology, the covert actions taken are fairly extreme, whatever. Um, I applied that to Belt and Roads Initiative to take a little bit of the air out of the tire of China, and that's what that book is about.
I've got not to interrupt you, and I'm gonna go back and read all your books, and we're gonna do episodes on all of them. I mean, granted, you'd have to agree to it. I can't just
Sure, I think
tell you
you'd
to go
enjoy
on.
him anyway.
No, I know I would because I enjoy Brine of War, and I'm not kissing your ass. I am my own boss. I am the dictator of Tommy's podcast. I don't have to have on anybody. So if I have someone on, it's because I want to have you on. But we'll go through all of them. But me and actually my friend that turned me on to you, Stoley, he and I had an idea we kind of floated around, I think last summer, but it was the most effective way to put the biggest blade into China would, because I mean, money is real, but it's also not. Fiat money is just, it's all a delicate balancing act. The petrodollar, the dollar backed by the gun, whatever. what's very real are resources. And if China goes around the world building their Belt and Road Initiative, they're using actual resources, iron ore, they're using concrete, they're using copper wires, they're powering it with turbines. Very real. It's, you can have $1,000, but I have the water, try to drink the $1,000. The game theory move you would do to take the most from China would be to have them expend physical resources building the Belt and Road Initiative and then collapsing China in on itself, because that's real material that they've used that they now can't use to build up their army. Do you think there's any logic to that, or is that wishful thinking? Is that, oh, we're playing 5D chess, but the reality is we're not. We're just getting our ass kicked.
Um,
So I have
uh,
another wild conspiracy along those lines, or a second one.
I mean, I kind of am doing that. So, the first book, I'm setting a stage with this particular individual, but I also delve into the whole idea of rare earth elements.
Mhm.
So that lovely iPod and iMac and iPhone that you just said, I mean, quite a bit of that. The raw material that's used to make some of the chips and yada yada yada. The touch screen, all that kind of stuff, come from quote rare earth elements.
Yeah.
So in that book, I kind of introduced just the idea of REE. Once again, and you have to look at the books go over a very broad timeline, from 2000 all the way up to present across all 5 books. But so rare earths are being exploited by China in Malawi. I mean, it's true. I'm not. You read these things. I have a lot of non-fictional sources backing up those kind of claims. So China is in the business of going into a place I mean, they're building Belt and Road Initiative. They're building ports. They're building rails so they can go somewhere and extract crap out of the ground, bring it back to China and manufacture.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I attack that. I kind of attack that value chain, to deny them the monetary wealth that they are building and doing other things with that wealth. So I kind of am doing that. At the same time, I'm also trying to, as you saw in Brine of War, a conversation with Elon Musk to say, hey man, can you go into Bolivia and do X, Y, Z? And if you do, oh, by the way, you'll be able to have a nice source of lithium for your electric vehicles, for your Teslas. And of course, Elon Musk is a pretty smart motherfucker, right? So he's like, yeah, cool, I'll do that. So I'm trying to build up our capacity on whatever ore. I don't care if it's iron ore, I don't care if it's copper. All these things are necessary for the stuff that we have.
Yeah.
The electrical wiring in your house is all it is copper. I mean, that's not sexy, right? But it's pretty damn necessary when you turn on the light switch.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I recognize that these things, I want us on the top of being able to manufacture whatever stuff that's in demand. And at the same time, I'm taking that away through really nasty covert action against China. And it's necessary at this point because we've given that up.
We've kicked the ball down the road.
Yeah, I mean, we've kicked manufacturing out of the U.S. to go somewhere where it's cheaper with slave labor, essentially, in these places. So I don't think you guys are really that crazy with those thoughts.
Yeah.
These are baseline, foundational, elemental things that we need to dominate and control, or else the reverse is going to happen.
Yeah. And that's kind of like another thing you realize with, I guess, with age, is like, it is a zero-sum world. More than anyone, I genuinely do pray for it every day, that there's world peace. Who wouldn't want that? I'm also not a fucking moron. It is we are just a tiny little leap away from, us living in the trees. We are barbarians. Not now, because I have a full tummy and I have water and I get to do a podcast for a living. What's that quote? Civilization is 4 meals away from anarchy. Like, we are at the core. I've had Dale Comstock on here before, former special activities division guy. He always says we are the warring ape. That's what we do. It is a zero-sum world. It is dominate or be dominated. There is no let's hold hands and go into the sun together. It's just not what, and I wish it was. Hey man, you take a nice dose of LSD and you sit in a field. Yeah, you'll wish for utopia, but then you come down and realize that,
Right.
hey, you got to go
Right.
put gas in your car. You can't put gas in your car with a smile.
And it's funny. I mean, you say it. I mean, I've gone through it. Anyone older than you, whoever that is, has gone through a few more cycles of the moon going around, the sun going, us going,
Yeah.
whatever. We've seen it, experienced, and now you can look back and say, okay, I'm 32. Back in the day when I was
Yeah,
18,
when I was a youngin.
well, and so relative to your age, you have learned quite a bit between 18 years old and 32.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone does. I will say though that there are some that haven't had those revelations, and it's probably a function of they're still being given free stuff by somebody.
Yeah.
But when that ends, is what you're saying, 4 meals away from anarchy. When that ends, when that gravy train ends, now what are you going to do? So, when I was in Ranger school, uh, you'd be in charge, and you'd say the platoon leader, patrol leader, whatever, and they would throw a little wrench in your plan, to fuck it up completely. And then you say, "What are you going to do now, Ranger?" And you had to think on your feet and make an adjustment that made tactical sense to the whatever, and you either failed or succeeded. Sometimes if you came up with just some completely nonsensical bullshit that you were going to end up walking through 3 miles of swamp, our eyes would fucking let you, to prove a point.
Yeah.
That was dumb. You realize that was dumb, don't you? Yes, Sergeant.
Well, it's like with this podcast, my dad's like, it's like, I think it's great. I think it's great that you're pursuing your dream and you're passionate about it. Just make sure it pays the bills. And it does. But
And
it's
there
very,
you go. There you
yeah.
go. I mean, there's the carrot and the stick all in
Yeah.
one thing, but it's it's your decision,
Yeah.
and you might come to a different conclusion in 6 months. Who knows?
Yeah. Oh, I have no idea.
But apparently you have the mental facility to understand the difference between, this and that, as far as this is a scenario that's sustainable and this one's not.
Yeah.
And all your dad's probably saying, I'm going to give him as much rope as he wants to hang himself.
Yeah.
I'm giving you the general parameters.
Yeah.
Son, I love you. You're my son. Yeah. General parameter is you got to do your own thing. So I think that's great. I think but think about it. How many people do you know that don't have that kind of guidance?
Yeah. Or they just went along
It.
from one thing to the next. You go from middle school to high school to college to, I had a friend that probably gave me one of the best pieces of advice. It was right after I just aced the MCAT, just finished up college, was ready to go interview at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. And one of the smartest guys I know was like, make sure you can answer why you're doing it and not because it's next. I was like, well, what do you mean? He was like, well, you finished 8th grade and then you went into high school that fall. You finished senior year and then became a freshman that fall in college. And now you're finishing. Are you doing it because it's next? Or are you doing it because you want to do it? And that was probably one of the seeds that eventually blossomed into me getting into medical school, but deciding not to go. But the point is I think a lot of people haven't been confronted with that because they've chosen a path of, I don't denounce it. The path of least resistance. You finished college and you got a job as an accountant. It's not sexy, but I'm home at 5 p.m. every day. I'm paid, which is fine. But you also don't kind of get whatever lessons are taught from just the brutal reality of, I got banned from YouTube. Get over it. Nobody fucking cares. Nobody cares. Truly, nobody cares. You know, Dr. Malone and Dr. McCullough, they have a good laugh about it, but they go about their day, and as well as they should, because they don't give a fuck. But kind of those lessons do, at least again, in my limited viewpoint as a 32-year-old, allow me to look at other things. And it's all my own projections. I don't know that it's objectively true. I can only go with my gut feeling. But it has me look at things like, how would you scale this up to a nation state? And instead of a podcast, it would be, you know, a country's own sovereignty. What things would you do? How balls to the wall would you go? How much sacrifice would you make to survive and thrive?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's the gloves come off, and, you know, or they don't, and then someone else's gloves come off and they come on to you. And it's a sad, I wish we could all sing Kumbaya together. There would be a wonderful world. It's not the case. It's just not.
I mean, people have each person has a different level of meanness, right?
Yeah.
Or fluffiness, you know. Um, but you know, a lot of people, you know, it's human nature. You know, competition is one thing. There's healthy competition. That's good. That's great. And then there's cutthroat type thing, and you have to adjust accordingly. Because if you don't, then what, right?
Well,
So you seem to be, you know, I would not, you know, 32. Well, okay, that's again, there was a period of time in your life where you had different input of information along the course of the way, but at 18 you thought X, and now at 32 you're thinking a little bit differently. Well, that's because things happened between 18 and 32,
mhm.
and you know, it'd be very unlikely that if you're uh, you have the mind that where you can take input and make some adjustments. A lot of people don't have that. They just fucking, this is where I'm full speed ahead. I'm going to just keep going.
Yeah.
But you seem to have that ability to make the adjustments. So when you're 60, say 30, you know, almost 30 years from now, you might be full circle.
Oh,
You
yeah.
don't really know.
Oh,
Huh?
yeah.
Yeah.
I
So I
say
mean,
that. I could very well be the leading Democratic candidate for some. I could be as far fucking left as you could throw a stick at. I have no idea.
but what's funny about that is you say Democrat. Okay. I mean, again, you put a label on, it's great. A Democrat, say 40 years ago,
Not a
maybe.
JFK Democrat. I mean, like an AOC Marxist.
Right, right. But I mean, the difference is astounding.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I grew up in Massachusetts when I was very young, and then moved to Maine. You know, later years. Um, I'm still in New England. I just won't say where, but I do have some time in Massachusetts and Maine. Oh, what the fuck was I going to say? There's actually a point to that.
Democrat, JFK, 40 years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, like I said, I'm older, so you know I forget things.
You learn the ability to jog
So
memories.
my father, being from Dorchester, Mass, way back when, was a, you know, totally Irish Catholic, you know, area of Boston. But and then therefore by extension, you know, anything with a Kennedy, he was
Mhm.
all over. So
Yeah.
he was about as Democrat as you could get, just because. But it was that mold of Democrat, and he's no longer with us. Hasn't been for you know, 14, 15 years or something. Um, he may be thinking quite differently. I mean, he would be. Who are these people? What did he say?
Yeah.
So all this stuff, it moves around so much. Uh, you know, maybe in our today's, we probably align pretty much, our headspace and timing aligns a little bit on the political thing. So I know what you mean when you say I'm going to be a blah 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 Democrat. I know what you mean in the context of 2022.
Yeah.
But hell, shit, 30 years from now, you know,
Yeah.
those terms may be completely unrecognizable the way we're going.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be like, are you for America or are you for the occupying force? It could be, you know, Yeah, my Irish Catholic grandparents, I believe they voted for Kennedy, and that was the only
Oh,
time ever.
you know, again, I know my father didn't. I mean, there's
Yeah.
no he didn't ever talk about those things ever.
Mhm.
You know, we were children. Right? But I would be very, very surprised if he did not.
Yeah.
But I go back to this excerpt I read. Gone were the days when Democrats and Republicans could at least, this is from my first book, Dems and Republicans could at least agree that the Soviet Union was bad, communism was bad,
Yeah.
and that America stood the ramparts of all that is good and just. I mean, that America standing the rampart, all good and just. People don't believe that today.
Yeah.
This is not the America I grew up in. I mean, if if you said something other than those words to me, I would punch you in the face. You would not be a friend. I'd be like, who are you?
Yeah.
What did you just say? So I think we're on the same sheet of music on that, but I don't know if I'll be here in 30 years, but I won't be surprised if that definition that we agree on now is the same 30 years from now. I kind of wonder.
I don't know if I'll be here in 30 years at the rate I'm going. It's kind of like what Curtis LeMay say. It's only a war crime if you lose the war. Yeah. I mean, at the rate we're going, I'm going to be thrown in a gulag for my podcasts.
Ah,
Yeah.
well, at least as things are, and I guess the president's going to lay down a marker on Friday with another speech, and I think we're all kind of looking forward. Okay, what is he going to say on
Yeah,
this
I've
thing?
been seeing people are saying there's a big speech coming.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Uh, my guess, he's been trying to build a case. January 6th, you have this whole right wing MAGA. They're really, those people are absolute lunatics. Yada yada yada, and we're going to crack down on them. I think that's the general, the
Yeah,
safety of America
they're gonna they're gonna
pitch.
paint MAGA as terrorists. They're gonna try to use DHS fusion centers to start arresting people. They're gonna make amendments to the First Amendment. That's what
Well,
they
see,
want.
that's where I don't know. The mechanism is there to make an amendment to the first. The mechanism is there. It is very clearly defined. So is the electoral college. The electoral college is specified. It has a very specific reason. Yada yada yada. But that doesn't mean it's not being challenged. Oh, we don't need an electoral college. Why should these people in Iowa have a say, to anything that goes on here in New York City? Because that's what the fucking Constitution says.
Yeah,
Now you can change that. Takes 2/3, yada yada, ratification by the state. Yada, there's a mechanism. I'd like to say I have faith in our legislators and our state legislations that they would see that as nonsense. We'll see.
Mike, I'm gonna go piss. I'm gonna have you monologue, and then I'm gonna come back and we'll talk a little bit longer. All right, you
Make
okay with
sure
that? Tell them where to get the book.
make sure you close the door so we don't have to hear you tinkle. Okay, I guess this is my monologue time. Anyway, I've written a bunch of books. They're generally geostrategic in nature. Again, I identify China, Russia, Iran, and Turkey as a cabal, as a specific alliance. Technically, an alliance is something that's in writing, yada yada yada. Well, it's an unwritten alliance. It's very clear if you're paying attention to all the events that are going on over the world as who is aligned with who, and who are they aligned against. Uh, they are aligned against the United States of America. The number one task for China is to drop us off the number one spot, and for them to take that spot. Once that happens, this alliance that I talk about, these four countries, all bets are off that they're going to stay in alliance, because China will say, I'm in charge, Russia, go pound sand. So that's the general structure of the book. Those are the bad guys. Each book, books 2, 3, 4, and 5 really take a country at a time. So the second book, When Tars Fall, that's about Turkey, the relationship between Turkey and Russia. I put a wedge in between those two via the Nord Stream pipeline interdiction operation. Then you get the third book, The Baltic Chain. So this is before the Ukrainian war that we see today. When that was going on, if you recall, Obama drew a red line in the sand, Syria, we did nothing. And next thing you know, Russia is in Syria in a port called Tartus on the Mediterranean Sea. So there's, the warlock sees this stuff going on. He attacks that port. He attacks the port in the Crimea. So that book is more so about taking a first little whack at Russia and their hegemony in Europe. Let me see, where am I at? The fourth book I talked about already, Boomslang Gambit. That's taking a whack at China directly. And then the last of that is the fifth book, Zangezur Campaign, and that's taking a whack at Iran, and specifically their nuclear program and their ballistics missile program, and that's in conjunction with Israel. And after doing all this chaos and mayhem all over the world, Russia still had the audacity to invade Ukraine. So I wrote the sixth book, and I put an end to all that nonsense, hopefully. So that's what all the books are about. You get them through Amazon. Just look up Mike Bennett. You can look up Mike Bennett. You can look up the Warlock series. Look up any of those titles. Just put in Boomslang, which is a snake. Boomslang, and one of the first things that'll pop up is that book. Click on that. There you go. All right, my host is back from his leak taking.
Hey, it is realpolitik. I do have to pee. That is just the brutal face of podcasting. His bladders do exist. Another kind of just to go way out there idea, at least could be nothing more than a mental exercise and trying to just stretch what we can and can't believe in. Looking from the standpoint of the military industrial complex, the endless war machine, even back before Eisenhower with Smedley Butler, talking about how, the war machine just exists and persists for no other reason than to dominate the world's resources. One idea, and I don't really give it any credibility, not above 1%, but one idea I had was Biden, again, just being a puppet, would ice the Keystone Pipeline and kind of push this green agenda specifically because we don't have rare earth minerals, and this is what I do believe, it's because he is helping dismantle the United States. But in this idea, it wouldn't be because of that. It would rather be a move by the military industrial complex, the deep state, to then build up our own reliance on these rare earth minerals, which would sway public opinion to remove any hesitance to go to war with China through proxy means or whatever. And another idea with that is that we left Afghanistan to goad China into occupying it, the same way that Brzezinski kind of teased the Soviet Union into Afghanistan, and then we armed the Mujahideen for a decade and bled Russia dry. Do you think there's any credibility to those ideas, or should I stop smoking crack?
First thing, I'll correct you, if you will. The United States does have, physically, we do have rare earth elements of pretty significant quantities, and I wrote that in the first book. And I'm reading a quote: "The United States enjoyed a monopoly in rare earth mining and exploitation until the late 1990s when China gained monopoly status. And then I go into a different quote from a different source. It was talking about regulation. The Institute for Energy Research commentary wrote, the United States currently does not mine rare earth minerals, but has large deposits of rare earth elements. Environmental regulations closed down the last rare earth mine in the United States at Mountain Pass in California, 1990s. Blah 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 blah. So we do have them, but we've pursued, ecological policies, whatever, to cock block any mining people that would be interested in making a business out of that in the country, therefore forcing all that stuff being done somewhere else. So we actually do have these resources. It's almost, I didn't know the extent to which we had natural gas resource with its fracture and whatever. I didn't realize that until we really started fucking pumping that stuff out. In a very short period of time with the appropriate, one of the things that Trump did, I agree with, was taking the gloves off with regulation. I mean, they just are whacking regulations, and then therefore providing the right kind of incentive for businesses to pursue whatever. And in that case, it was energy, right? And next thing you know, we're the top exporter of energy in the world. So we have this stuff. This is the stuff that we've inherited, that we've talked about. I can remember the history books that I read that would talk about the vast resources of America, blah, 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 blah. We do have these things. I mean, physical, ores in the ground and whatnot. But we're not taking advantage of that. We're opting to let others profit on those things. So you're not wrong in your wild, suggestion of, hey, should we do X, Y, Z? Stuff is there. Stuff is there to go forward with it.
Let's play devil's advocate. And when looking at the 100-year chessboard, right? If
which we don't do, that's the problem. But yeah,
China does.
Yeah,
China does it very well.
Yeah.
Let's say we're looking at the 100-year chessboard, and I've got 10 cases of water in my apartment, and Mike lives next door, and you've got 10 cases, and I'm paying money through the ass to buy your water from you. Someone might go, why the fuck are you doing that? You have your own water. And then they might even go, oh, you're out to dismantle our apartment, Tommy. You don't want us to win. You're an agent of Mike. Or I could look at it and go, on the long term, say I just see whatever, a drought coming, civil unrest coming. I know that my dollar bills will do me no good. The best I could do is pull a Pablo Escobar and burn them for heat. But I know that I can't drink a dollar bill. So I might take my dollar bill while a global currency system still exists and go and buy as much water as I can, because water is real, money's fake. When the chips are down, that's the reality. And then I'll have that water and my water. And once I finish drinking Mike's water, and only then will I have to tap into my water. Is there, and I don't think this is what we're doing, but to play devil's advocate, to challenge my own beliefs, could it be that we're going to try to use something quote unquote fake, just like the Federal Reserve, just credit card, of buying China's physical rare earth minerals to the point where they eventually cut us off if a war ever goes hot? And then, and only then, do we start having to deplete our own resources? Is there any logic to that, or is that giving way too much credit to the military establishment, the elite establishment of the United States? Or are they just fucking traitors?
I guess the first thing when I look at that example, we don't have the money to do that in the first place, really. We're $30 trillion in debt.
Well, the idea would be that we all know that the house of cards is coming down, so might as well rake up this fake money while we can.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, you quote print money, but but I think China is smart enough to say, well, okay, where are they getting this money from? And
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and let's say, okay, then they say, okay, fine, the money itself is valid, great, but they also would say, what are these guys doing?
Why are they doing it?
Why are they doing this?
Because they know we have the rare earth minerals.
So the price that you thought you were going to pay, I'm sure triple.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, you're going to buy all this stuff at triple the price. You know, I think that's probably what would happen. I think they're quite clever,
Yeah.
and they have their finger on the pulse of what we're doing. I mean, it's not monetary, but I think they're quite cognizant that we're distracted with pronouns while they're you know, conquering the world, and they're obtaining, you know, same kind of idea, a tangible thing. They're obtaining access through a port at whatever place, and that whatever place is either en route from someplace they're extracting minerals out of the ground that they're going to turn into money. So they're just going to hit that little port on the way back to China, or it's the port right there that they also paid the money to pay for the rail system to the actual uh, uh, extraction site itself. They paid the whole damn thing so they can bring that raw material back to China and manufacture all that beautiful iPhone and such that you have. Um, they're a lot smarter. Um, well, they are more ruthless in the execution of their plan. First, they have a plan that's coherent, and they're ruthless in the execution of it, which is kind of what the warlock is.
They're
You know,
hungrier.
we have very, very smart people, even in our present government, even under the Biden administration.
Sure.
They're Americans. They're smart fucking people. Now, what we do have a problem with is all you smart dudes that are on tier level 4. You work for people on tier 3, tier 2, tier 1. And tier 1 kind of sets the tone of whatever. Doesn't matter what it is. And that trickles down. Doink, 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 doink. Because the guy in tier 3 wants to get to tier 2.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gonna do what he's told. So everyone below tier 1, they're all in execute mode. They're not in ask questions mode, you know, because they want to survive in their career. But even with that said, and that tier 3 or 4 guy is smart enough to know that when the tier 1 guy changes, I'm going to flip a switch,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to, you know,
Gonna play
start
ball.
saying the things that this guy wants to hear. So that's just internal, you know. And China sees that. They know we have these kind of people that are malleable. They're much more cognizant. I think they would know the game we're going to play with buying rare earths before we do.
Sure.
Because it's not rocket science. I'm not saying these guys are brilliant. I'm not saying they're that smart. It's not rocket science.
If I
You
can
know,
come up with it in my
no, just you know what they are doing, not just that's any scenario. You know, you know, at its face value, it's yeah, you know, okay, yeah, sure, and uh, we have to understand that and make moves accordingly. Uh, Unfortunately, we're not there. We're making moves, but they're inconsonant. They're just out of phase with what needs to be done. You know, I think we understand. We're cognizant of the players on the board, but we're just, yeah, blow that off. I'm going to do this anyway because my ideology says we're going to do X. It has nothing to do with rational thought. That in a nutshell, that's our biggest problem is we're not thinking rationally, you know, we know the problem set that exists that needs to be solved, but we ignore that because we have an ideological kind of other priority. Our priorities are really just really what's out of whack. If the president just comes on Friday and he says something way out of nowhere, and he says, "Well, I've decided that Keystone Pipeline is a resource of great significance that I'm gonna turn the tap on that 100%." I guarantee you, we could do it without a doubt, without any doubt. We could turn right on the dime and start executing. But it would take that tier one guy to make that change. That ain't happening.
And when you see the people at the top making these decisions, and then you have just the crowd that's like, they're asking for civil war. You're not wrong. They are, but they may not give a fuck because let's say you're beholden to an exterior power. Civil war is best case scenario, baby. Collapse the thing from within. We don't live in a vacuum. Like
Yep.
the world still goes on without us.
Yep.
And our worldwide bases, Base Nation by David Devine, great book. The global chessboard keeps being played. So yeah, if someone is trying to collapse us in a civil war, yeah, that plays right into their hands. So, or are we looking at something else? Are we looking at the blind intelligence of evolution, right? Evolutionary biology, where you don't no giraffe decided it was going to just grow. It's you have a giraffe that has some sort of deformity or genetic mutation, and its neck is like an inch taller than the rest. Well, that giraffe is going to get like 10%, maybe 5% more food than the rest of the giraffes. It's not a whole lot, but after, deep time, after 1,000 generations of these things, a million years goes by in the blink of an eye, or that would be like 100,000 generations. It eventually leads to the point where the one with the tall neck is getting the most food, can provide the most, it's fucking the most, and it's having the most kids that have a long neck. And then that process sharpens itself. It's another
Mhm.
great book called the Beak of the Finch, where these biologists kind of measured it in real time. And like a genetic mutation would give a finch like a beak that was like 1% denser. And within 10 years, that the direct lineage of that finch would take over the island. And it's an artificial intelligence, if you will, not in the traditional sense of AI, but it's a natural intelligence is probably a better term for what creates where we are. It's why sharks they stopped evolving like 250 million years ago because they have just mastered it from the flow of water to burning as little calories as possible to they have a dark top so when you look down you don't see them, and they have a light bottom so when you look up from below them you don't see them. They're perfect. Are we just watching? Are we examining one generation so we don't get to see the big picture? If you watch a glacier throughout your lifetime, maybe it moves an inch, but over a billion years, it demolishes a continent. Are we just watching a hyper zoomed in, hyper slowed down replacement of the American system by the Chinese system? Is it just, is it evolution? Is it the evolution of empire?
You know, there's a lot of people kind of that's exactly what they're saying. Hey, look what happened to Rome. That's how,
Sure.
the demise of an
Yeah.
empire
Sack
is
the treasury. Yeah.
so there's a lot of people that's what they're thinking. And that's the understanding, and they probably are. These power exchanges are cyclical.
Hmm.
But go back to what you said earlier on in the program. You believe the United States is still the best place, relative, perhaps, to two things: everyone else, and relative to this point in time.
Hmm.
I mean, I could say what you said, and I could say I believe in America, but I believe in America 40 years ago.
Sure.
I could say, I mean, but to what you're saying, um, at this little juncture in time where I am in my life, and just the observations I've made, and you think about the amount of data that you have access to as a 32-year-old young man, that a lot more than I had when I was say 20, right? Um, so you have a much larger aperture than you think. Has nothing to do with age, has to do with how much information you've consumed. And maybe you have consumed more because you've gone out to seek it. So your perspective is going to be a little bit different than the knucklehead down the street that reads comic books and that's all he does. So it's one of the, it's kind of relative. I'm not sure I could call the ball on this. I think you're right. We're still the best thing. We're the guys with the white hats. And you read my books and you think I'm being a bastard. And you could come to that conclusion. You say, boy, this guy's evil. And I want things to be at this different point where as you say, I believe America's the best bet. And I want us to be the place people want to come to legally, and bring their skills with them, because we need good people. Great, fine, wonderful. So I'm not willing to give that up. I don't think we're there yet. We still can turn this ship. It's going to take some effort. And I'm talking, when I say turn the ship, I'm still talking 10, 20, 30 years.
Sure.
But I don't want to give it up to China, that absolutely, without a doubt, and there's a whole bunch of this in Boomslang Gambit about the Uyghurs, the situation.
They're Nazis. They're modern day Nazis.
You've got the Uyghurs, within their own border, and depending on whose definition, you could look at Tibet. That's depending on who you're talking to. That's another autonomous region that falls within China, but they're pulling the same shenanigans they did with the Uyghurs on the Tibetans, and in that case, it's over lithium. Those aren't the good guys. Someone could try to convince me that they are better and more wholesome than the United States, and you just could not. We are the best country in the world. If there needs to be someone that can kind of have some oversight and keep things on a level plane, of sanity, I think we're the ones that should wear that crown, and I don't want to give that up. So I think you're absolutely correct. The way you stated it, we still are. We are the best in the world. We shouldn't want to give that up. And there's a shit ton of places, and I think it's in Boomslang. I make a whole big point of how much money the philanthropic money. There's a beautiful little chart in there, where the warlock is kind of musing about how good we are. So I go into that whole kind of thing, that sounds like some of the things I suggest in destroying China are very, very bad. But the bottom line, what did I say here? He had, however, seen plumbers, farmers, laborers, all sorts of citizens wrung from the American experiment, who poured out their hearts when catastrophes shook the roots of the world. I'm talking about this philanthropy. And I have a nice little chart of how much money in billions of dollars that American citizens throw into. Just this week, Pakistan had another flood, and I guarantee you, we will just put millions and millions and millions of dollars. And Pakistan, these people are dirtbags as far as the government goes.
They housed Bin Laden.
Yeah, I mean, they're horrible. I mean, really. But I guarantee you, what will the United States do? What have we always done? We give our hearts, we give our heart and soul to the rest of the world to fix their problems.
I agree with you 1,000% that if you walk out my postulation that this is the evolution of empire, well, then you then have to conclude that natural selection is pushing us towards a communist dictatorship, which the average person does not want. And
Yeah,
not because
I
they're
don't know if
the
it's natural selection. I mean,
but
it's selection because we elect to pursue these totally idiotic policies. Um, it's not natural selection in the sense that you're talking about the evolutionary thing with the finch's beak and all that kind of stuff. I don't think.
I think what we're seeing is, well, I mean, what I mean is, if you walk out my postulation, that's what you would have to accept, is that that is the most quote unquote fit thing. And not, if you asked anyone honestly, not because their government's watching with a gun to their head, but you asked honestly, like, where would you rather live?
Right.
99 out of 100 times, 999 out of 1,000 times,
Sure.
it's a free society. It's just, it's just what it is. That's,
And specifically by name, it's where.
it's America.
Correct.
It's as what's his name? David Hoffman, I think. He wrote the book The $1 Billion Spy about Oleg, whatever his name was, CIA spy and the Soviet Union, who helped steal a bunch of plans for the MiG and brought them over to us. He was eventually caught and executed. But when his CIA handler asked him, like, "Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to bring this like compact Kodak into like a KGB guarded facility?" And he was like, yeah, like, I don't give a shit. And they're like, this is life or death. And he was like, I don't care. It's because his parents were thrown into a gulag. And I believe it's Hoffman calls it, just like we have the hidden hand of the free market, some Adam Smith shit. It's, there's the hidden hand of tyranny in that you have these guys. It's, I don't care if I'm killed. I want to bleed this machine dry. And that's what he
Right.
did. And it's the reason why we were able to know what the MiG was going to look like before it came out. He was eventually caught and he was shot in the head. But he said from early on, he knew that was the inevitable end and he didn't give a shit because he wanted to destroy the machine that hurt him. There is a hidden hand. You'll never hear him say it because the Great Firewall of China, everything's monitored. But you can't with a straight face say the guy making 3 cents a day in a Foxconn factory would not rather live in San Diego where he could go make 100 times that serving hot dogs to jackasses like me.
Right.
It's, and I guess that is, maybe it's naive, maybe it's doe-eyed, but that's my optimism, is that the hidden hand, for all of our flaws, and there are many, it's the best place to be,
Correct.
the freest place to be. The hidden hand will drive us there. That doesn't mean it's not going to get sloppy in the interim. That doesn't mean you're not going to not need the special activities division or ground branch or air branch or maritime branch, or you're not going to need, you know, a Warlockian figure or some directed energy weapons from orbit. It's going to get messy. But even then, it will be, yeah, sure, we nuked Hiroshima, we nuked Nagasaki. My dad's dad was 18, and I think he was in the Philippines getting ready to be part of the mainland invasion. Cannon fodder. I wouldn't be here. A lot more people would have died. And the reality is after we invaded, if we invaded the mainland, that would only go on for so long before we dropped the nuke anyway. It's a brutal decision that ultimately saved lives. You're probably going to have that in the interim. You're probably going to have, yeah, some shooting down a Malaysian airliner over the Arctic Circle, or, you know, dropping the torpedoes in the shipping container, which is fucking brilliant. We're probably going to have that. And it's what is the few good men, like, you know, you want me on that wall, you need me on that wall, right? It's
Right.
You want the guy. You know, when I talked to Dale, and Dale was in Delta Force at age 23, he was CIA Special Activities Division. I mean, motherfucker kill you with a pencil 1,000 ways. I look at him and I can't contemplate that because I live in a world where I get to sit in front of an iMac and say, let's agree to disagree. Whereas Dale has been the barrel of the gun from which American power flows. But no part of me for 1 second goes, Dale is evil. No, I want Dale on that wall.
Dale's necessary.
I need Dale on that wall. And
Right.
I acknowledge, and I always say this, you know, I know people hate when you say thank you for your service. The reason why I say that to guys when I interviewed like Mike Durant is I always say, and it's kind of become a shitty catchphrase, but it really is thank you for men like you so that boys like me can live the life I live. Because at 32, I am living the relative life of a boy. I've never had to get a Browning and go storm Omaha Beach. I acknowledge that. I guess You don't want to contemplate a warlock, but the reality is you want the warlock. You need the warlock. I hope the warlock exists, and if it doesn't, I hope it comes to be, and it wouldn't ask for permission. It would look at the 1,000-year chessboard and go, America on top equals this much death and destruction.
Right.
A communist power on top equals that times 100.
It's certainly not a difficult concept.
No,
It really isn't. That's
no,
because
it's
you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And hopefully, again, like I said, this November, whatever, people go to the ballot box and they'll kind of say, this is where we are,
mhm.
and we'll see. We'll see what happens. But again, I think we're on the same sheet of music. I agree with you 100%. These things are ugly. I've seen my fair share, uh, but they are necessary, uh, because there is another alternative. And I really am unconvinced that Vladimir Putin is the alternative that's what is desirable. And it's going to be a matter of years or so before we're really trying to figure out where these two, where their heads are at and where they're going. But it's not just a, James Bond kind of scenario that I'm trying to write about, where there's so and so is going to be world domination, or Austin Powers making fun of that. That's I fear that really is the general trajectory that they're on, and it's perhaps a little more subtle because it's an economic dominance, and a lot of Americans said as long as they can get that Apple iMac or what have you, and I have one right in front of me, a MacBook Pro, they really don't give a shit. But eventually, you'll pay the piper. Eventually, these things will come around. And so I'm kind of hoping that I'm raising some awareness, to a degree, through fiction, in this set of books. I did have another host ask me, well, those were great. That's great. This motherfucker. I'm like, dude, you need to sit down and you need to write this stuff. This takes a lot of effort, a lot more than I thought. Trust me. These little books take just a shit ton of effort. And he said, well, where's the next 5 books coming? Dude, this is hard. Give me some time.
I think you need to keep I thought Brine of War was fucking fantastic. I
Well,
thought it was a better 2-hour read than most 50-hour fiction books. It was fantastic. You absolutely need to keep making them.
and it's just kind of what he was. But this particular campaign, again, those 4 countries, is done. I mean, if these fucking guys don't fold after this book, and plus there's stuff that goes on prior too, right? If they're not done in the business of world domination, I don't know what to do. So I do have to find a different target set.
Well, you haven't extrapolated yet into the future. You could write some books about possible outcomes. You haven't done that.
Well, I tell you, there's a, I give him credit in the front of the book. Steve Stratton, he wrote a book called Shadow Tier, which is a fantastic book. And he's a special forces guy himself, and he's retired from SF. And I think he's going to retire from Secret Service in the next couple of months. But he wrote all the stuff about Lance Bear Wolf, if you remember the recon guy, who's the recon leader that links up with Goose in Brine of War.
I've seen you before. We'll catch up later.
Yeah, there's 1 or 2 chapters. Steve wrote those, so he and I collaborated a little bit on Brine of War, and he and I are thinking of doing a further collaboration, and what I'm going to do to tie this whole thing up, I guess. My thoughts are I want to go back in time to the actual origination of the warlock. So you
Yeah.
read this, you read the little
Yeah.
paragraph. It says there's always been a warlock
Choose a successor.
since the Reagan administration. So I want to go back to, well, who was the first warlock? And you haven't read the other books, but books 4 and 5. So you read through all these books, blah blah blah. There's character, all this stuff go on, and then starting in book 1, you start a chapter and it's written in first person. I this, da 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 da. I that, da 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 da. And your literary guys are gonna be like, what the fuck, why do we have this tense, thing going on? And then you read the 5th book, and then it turns out that I guy had been a previous warlock, and he is advising the current warlock. And he's in bad, by the time book 5 rolls around, he's in bad shape, and he dies. He's dying. Whatever. And then the story goes on, blah 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 blah. But if you're paying attention to the tenses, like, oh, what's that about? Well, my thought is I want to go back to the beginning of the Reagan administration. Who was the first guy that, Reagan selected to be this warlock? That's my thought. And I want to work with Steve on something with that because we have some ideas. So that will kind of wrap up this first thing. And I've wrestled with the idea of domestic. And I just don't know if I want to go down that road to apply some of the methodologies that I use against our other adversaries internally.
It's all fiction. Who gives a shit? Do it.
Yeah,
first warlock needs to be Lieutenant General. Needs to be James Abramson.
I already have kind of a template in mind.
It needs to be Abramson, head of SDI.
So we're talking, a 1983 appointment, right? So what is this guy's background?
Able Archer.
He's probably at the very least a Vietnam vet, right? Possibly, World War II. So if I go back to the guy and I try to align the timelines where you have a little older but seasoned person in 1983, would he still live till 2018, 2019? I have to look at the timeline.
He could live to his 90s or something.
Yeah, he'd be an old dude. But
you'd have to have someone that liberated concentration camps. You'd have to have someone that's just seen the raw face.
There you go. So that's if I can make the timeline fit, not too crazy, 100-year-old dude. The guy will be an OSS, kind of person, without a doubt. I've already got that in my mind. And if I can't go back that far, you can still get the SOG kind of guys in Vietnam.
MACV. So or you could go with someone maybe involved with Operation Paperclip, right? And it would be like guys that did the unthinkable, brought Nazis to America because they saw the big picture, beating the Soviet Union.
Right.
You could that would be a badass backstory.
And that fits with the warlock. He's if you look at it a certain kind of lens, he's immoral. The things that he does in Brine of War, depending on the purity of the lens through which you gaze, some of his actions are immoral.
Yeah. Detached.
Until you start looking at the big picture, big picture. So, and I'm hoping enough people read this stuff, historians, whatever, and they bring that kind of stuff up, and it's done kind of purposefully.
Yeah.
Yes, it's only fiction. Yes. I'm hoping a lot of people will read into it. It goes a little bit beyond that. But at the same time, it's intended to be entertaining. It's supposed to be fun, light reading.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the hell out of writing that whole stuff with Mr. Lansing. He's just a fucking bureaucrat.
Douchebag.
Yeah. So it's very heavy in sarcasm. Anyone that reads the thing, I hope you see that. I thought it was pretty not subtle, but It's still meant to be entertaining. So
I could put you in touch with Dale. Maybe that could be a cool source of information. He was in Ground Branch for like 10 years. But Mike, I'm gonna have to cut this one. I know
sure.
kind of abruptly.
Do yours.
I got
Yeah.
another guest entering because I'm a jackass who schedules multiple guests a day because I don't know how to stop working. But I would love to have you on again. I'll message you when this is up.
Sure.
It'll be up this afternoon, this evening. I'm absolutely going to go through all your other books. I'd love to have you on for
I
them.
don't know if you have to slog through all of them. There is important stuff, but you could even just start with books 2 or 3, or even just 3, because three is Ukraine, so it's pretty relevant to today.
I burn through about a book a week, so I'm not. I'll get slog through them. I don't give a shit.
Cool.
I think I've gone through 60 books in 2022. 61 in 2022.
It's a lot of reading.
Voracious. Well, Audible. Listen to it, so I can do
Well,
other shit.
I am working on the second book being put into Audible specific format. The lady that's doing it is taking a little time, but I will be going down the audiobook road pretty soon.
Fuck yeah. Well, hey, Mike, thank you so much for coming on, man. I know, I know I'm cutting it abruptly. Other guest is waiting.
No. We've been on long enough, certainly.
It's been fucking great, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
I enjoyed the book in the description. I enjoyed it as well. I'll put your Twitter in the description. If you want to send me any other links you want me to copy and paste in the description, I'll do it. I'll send it to you this evening, and we will coordinate another episode.
Sure. All righty.
Thank you so much, man. Yep. Thank you so much. God bless America. Stay